Hey guys, Lively here. I'm back to torture myself with Death Stranding 2, a game I said I'd never play after experiencing the first one, and then immediately decided you'd probably like it if I made a video about my suffering. And if you didn't watch the first video, you should probably do that now, because I won't be doing any sort of recap of the first game. Fair warning, this video will contain spoilers for the entirety of Death Stranding 2, so consider yourself warned. Having said that, let's get started. I'm reunited with Norman Sam Reedus and his adoptive ex-BB Lou in the scenic mountains of Mexico, and one thing I'll say right off the bat is that this game is visually stunning. Since I'll be spending the next 100 hours despising pretty much everything else about this sequel, it feels appropriate to start it off on a positive note, because it's pretty much all downhill from here. Something called a gatequake shatters a nearby mountain to cause a landslide, giving me my first taste of a game mechanic that I'll pretty much never see again, which is impressive considering the game keeps reminding me that it exists every 10 minutes, like it's desperately trying to convince me that it matters. And I'm quickly disappointed to learn that I can't violently shake my daughter like I could in the first game, making this game already noticeably worse than the original, and I guess I'm just stuck with this kid for the time being. My house is apparently overtaken by BTs, but don't worry because it's all just a haunted Wi-Fi hologram to scare people away, and I'm treated to some world's best dad moments before a mysterious stranger rolls up on a unicycle and breaks into my house. And despite having easy access to both knives and guns, I reach for the most feared weapon in gaming history, cookware. But it's okay, it's just fragile with her new magic hands. Turns out I've been in hiding for almost a full year since the events of the last game, and I only got found out because my neighbor succumbed to the real villain of Death Stranding, broadband expansion. But that's a problem for later, I guess, since Fragile wants me to go spread the internet down to Mexico where all they really have now is deserts and sadness. And despite my best efforts to say no, Kojima starts trolling me non-stop for as long as I keep rejecting the proposal, until eventually the only option left is to say yes, rendering this brand new dialogue selection system completely meaningless. Thanks, Kojima. Very cool. Fragile offers to hang out here as my babysitter while I'm gallivanting around down south for God knows how long, and gives me another magical floating necklace because gravity in this universe is apparently more of a suggestion than a law. She feeds my daughter a gravity-defying water bear, and just like that, I'm on the road again. I almost immediately encounter a raider camp where I'm taught how to mark enemies, which is the first mechanic in Death Stranding 2 that's stolen directly from Metal Gear Solid 5, but definitely not the last. And I'm able to take out the whole camp with the strongest weapon in the game, a small piece of colorful rope that you can get at your local Home Depot. Get used to this because it's how I ended up dealing with pretty much every enemy for the next 40 hours or so. The next new mechanic is right around the corner though, as I'm thrust into a vicious dust storm, leaving me struggling with balancing my supplies and unable to see more than 5 feet ahead of my face, though some semblance of normalcy can be restored by clinging to the sides of buildings. And while dynamic weather systems like this seem like a pretty cool change of pace compared to the drab, colorless world that was Death Stranding 1, this is the only dust storm I'll be seeing for a long time. If you're starting to sense a pattern here, then congratulations on paying attention. This will be a common theme going forward. Death Stranding 2 absolutely loves introducing new mechanics in the same way that I introduce myself to new hobbies. Total commitment for like 20 minutes and then never thinking about them again. I'm pretty much back to basics after that, by which I mean it's a pretty simple matter of using ladders to cross rivers and spending ungodly amounts of time lightly jogging towards various quest markers, during which time I'm introduced to the revolutionary concept of social media. For some inexplicable reason, Death Stranding 2 decided what I really needed was a social media network called the Social Strand Service, or SSS. And I was right all along, this really is just a game about Facebook. And this thing from here on out will be dinging in the corner of my screen constantly with a bunch of inane crap I don't care about. But it's also necessary since a lot of people later will use it to give me new quests and stuff, despite holographic chiral projections being completely commonplace in this world. I'm able to activate terminals and give the people of the world free internet access, and in return I'm given access to a private room here where the developers made the shocking decision to remove the need to watch myself go to the bathroom nonstop. And this also gives me far less Norman Reedus ass than last time, and I'm honestly not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing since my lady friends think he's really hot, and this game is pretty boring, so I don't think taking away what little sex appeal it has was the best idea. But whatever, I figure now's a good time for a nap, so I lie down on my pillowless bed and have a dream about cuddling with my baby on the beach before my giant sister mom takes her, and for a game entitled On the Beach, this is shockingly one of the only scenes in the entire game that takes place on a beach, despite it being a pretty prominent aspect of the first game. I really think they should have picked a better title, like Death Stranding 2, Going International, or Where in the World is Sam Porter Bridges? Speaking of my kid, she and Fragile are in the room when I wake up, but it's just another hologram and I'm not interested in talking to fake people, so I pop outside to see the loadout screen that's also lifted straight from Metal Gear Solid 5, and it sucks that I can't bring D-Walker with me everywhere I go, but I can change my glasses, so I guess that's close enough. Another bandit camp proves that electric taser rods are no match for the power of my almighty rope, leaving me free to hijack their truck so I can drive over to another settlement that needs my help and give them free access to all the local chiral networks in their area, but not before running into some weird little spider bugs that zap the power from my batteries whenever I touch them. Another facility added to the network means another forced nap to progress the story, and I wake up to another one of those gatequakes happening off camera, as they always do, so I gotta go check and see if the next identical looking facility is okay and take out any BTs that might be around the place. I guess our Doom's powers are basically like supernatural cancer since I learned I've leveled up to stage 3, which means I can now see BTs without plugging my brain into a bridge baby pod, and no reason is ever given for this other than just because the player needs this. And with that, I'm off to the research facility up in the mountains. I take out some ghosty boys along the way as a sort of tutorial on how to handle these guys, then connect the lab up to the network, which does something very surprising. My guns are now all non-lethal and also affect BTs. In Death Stranding 1, I had to choose to bring either lethal or non-lethal guns, and change my ammo type based on the enemy I was going up against. But I guess someone decided that was way too complicated, and now I can just go full auto on anything I see for the rest of the game, which is kind of a nice quality of life feature, I guess, but also takes away one of the only elements of actual strategy these games had going for them. And I can only assume this was done because too many players were too stupid to figure out the difference between the red bullets and the blue bullets. I'm forced to take yet another nap, which is already getting pretty irritating, and Deadman holograms himself into my room while I'm sleeping to say hello, and I think he's gained weight since the last time we met. And it makes me wonder if the chiral holograms can be programmed to project a more flattering version of yourself like they were in VR chat. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Deadman tells me about something called the Plate Gate, which serves as a mystical portal connecting Mexico and Australia like a little teleporter, and the reason for its existence is never once explained, but we needed a Death Stranding too, and since North America is already all connected, Mexico is apparently too small, and South America would make far too much sense, I needed a new continent to link up, so Magic Gate to Australia it is. Then he pulls what is the most infuriating thing to me ever, and says he has something more important than that to tell me, before sitting me down and saying he's going to take a shower instead of telling me the important thing, because we need to build dramatic tension, and this is clearly the best way to do it. I mean, imagine your doctor saying, we got your test results back, but I'm gonna head out to lunch first, is that cool? That's pretty much what he's doing right now. Another gatequake strikes, and there's a boss battle waiting for me outside, so now I gotta go pack my guns and get to work. And I think it would have felt slightly less frustrating if this quake had knocked out the power or something instead of Deadman literally saying he's not telling me important things on purpose. But what do I know? I'm not a writer. This script is 34 pages long. The monster outside looks like a big human head with a bunch of tentacles on it until it opens up to reveal Satan's vagina, so I think to myself, what pairs together better than vaginas and blood? So I try to throw one of my blood grenades into its gaping maw, but it just eats me and I get my first game over. That went well. My second attempt at taking down the most aggressively Freudian boss design Kojima's produced this year goes a bit better despite this boss fight being incredibly frustrating due to Sam's inability to walk or stand up within a reasonable time frame, not to mention the vagina head thing constantly trying to suck me down. Why do I write these things? But I eventually hit it with enough of what I lovingly call my time of the month special attack and it turns into little golden crystal hands. Victory is ours. Also, just a little side note, do you remember how Sam's canteen magically turned water into Monster Energy drink in the first game? Well, apparently Monster's sponsorship expired or something, so now hydration is canon. This literally happened in Idiocracy. I hike my way to the next facility and I'm reminded of that one time when I was a kid and I was playing Final Fantasy VIII in the living room and my dad was like, so that's all this game is? You just walk around? And I was like, no dad, you just don't understand. But now I'm starting to think maybe he was onto something there. This Smurf guy, why is he blue? Makes me go back to bed where Deadman finally resumes his previous train of thought to tell me about my kid and reveals that our daughter's origins aren't what I thought and I have no idea where she came from. And to be honest, I don't know why he'd bother telling me this without having any other information or why I should even really care. He does leave me some vaccinations he made for Lou though, so I guess that's nice. He goes on about how he doesn't know if there's a place for him in the afterlife since he doesn't know if he has a soul, so he does his best Virginia Woolf impression and I guess he's finally living up to his name and that's the last we'll be seeing of him. Or is it? Fragile tells me to come on back home and give Lou some autism injections now that Mexico has Wi-Fi, so I connect in other places up along the way and that's when it happened. The moment that changed the course of my life forever. Well, maybe not forever, but the next 2 weeks for sure. A mere passing thought that I chose to vocalize while I was playing this.
Maybe I'll 100% this.
These are words I have come to regret deeply. I get home to find the place completely trashed because Fragile's a terrible babysitter, and Sam has quite possibly the most baffling reaction to this scene when he simply says,
Nobody's home. Maybe outside.
and Sam, please, read the room. I find Fragile outside where she tells me my house was attacked and she tried to make an epic getaway on her unicycle before getting gunned down, at which point she figured the best way to get out of this mess was to use her beach jumping powers to teleport Lou out of here before getting shot like a dog in the street. And then waking up to find Lou dead in the sand. And these games really have a weird affinity for showing us dead babies. Seriously, this is like the third or fourth dead baby I've seen. It's weird. It's a weird thing to do. She apologizes for what can only be described as the biggest screw up in Babysitters Club history, but considering we were doing just fine for a year, and then my daughter was dead within 2 days of her showing up, I think I can speak for everyone here when I say that she is not forgiven. Dead Lou starts crawling around on the floor and getting her stupid tar handprints all over the carpet before my new BT baby crawls its way into my old BB pod. And now I can have my own personal BB again, just like in the first game. Because while some franchises try to grow and tell new stories as they go, Death Stranding is only interested in issuing refurbished babies. And that's the end of episode 1. Episode 2 starts with me back at the beginning in the mountains of Mexico, except now I'm in a world of BTs and I hallucinate another dead baby, so I shoot myself in the head, which is a purely symbolic effort since I'm very aware that I'm an immortal repatriate that just comes back to life anytime I die. So I take a moment to focus on my BTBB baby before Fragile comes in and I'm shown an orgy of evidence that I'm suffering from depression, denial, and alcoholism. And I've apparently been blowing my own head off over and over. So she takes me outside and shows me her flying Metal Gear Rex head because apparently every Kojima game is contractually obligated to have at least one Metal Gear pop into frame somehow despite Konami firing his ass. Then she declares that the cure for my sadness is to go for a long walk, and that's the end of episode 2. And yes, this episode was nothing more than a short cutscene about how emotionally devastating it can be to work for the United Parcel Service. My ship puts me through a quick forced rehab, and I wake up sober as a judge because it turns out detoxing in the Death Stranding universe takes about 8 seconds. So I immediately ask where my BTBB is. Fragile responds to say that she's with her, and I gotta say, Fragile's the very last person I want looking after Lou for pretty obvious reasons, I would think. But I guess Sam thinks this is perfectly acceptable, and I'm given access to a map of the ship known as the DHV Magellan. At this point, I was pretty excited because I thought I'd have this whole ship to explore and different ways to hang out with and talk to my other crew members. But, spoilers, the only thing you can do on this ship is sit in your private room, use the shower, and occasionally trigger scripted cutscenes. So the whole reason for this multi-layered map and home base area is completely pointless, and I don't know why it exists. I don't need a map of a place I can't explore. It's like giving me a mall directory and locking the front doors. Seriously though, the similarities here to Metal Gear Rex just can't be ignored. I mean, look at this thing. It's a carbon copy of its head, complete with a railgun on top since it doesn't have any arms. You really need to move on, Kojima. Fragile comes in to welcome me to the ship, and I can't help but notice she doesn't have Lou with her, so either she's a liar or she already lost another baby. Then tells me her funding comes from an incredibly wealthy but anonymous donor, which isn't at all suspicious, before introducing me to the ship's captain, Tarman. And normally I'd say this name is a little on the nose since he's piloting a ship that flies through the otherworldly tar to get around, but you ain't seen nothing yet. Also, he's got this tar cat with wings or something, and this creature's existence is never once explained or even really discussed. And again, this is a common theme that you'll just have to get used to in this game. Fragile lights up a smoke and tells me I'm here to further expand our internet coverage across the globe, but don't worry, it's totally not to expand the UCA's borders or anything. We're totally the good Samaritans in all this, and please just ignore every empire in history that's ever said this exact line. And I can say as a lifelong citizen of the United States of America that I don't believe that for a single second. I spot Lou on the floor sitting in some tar because Fragile continues to be an excellent babysitter, and then some puppet swings by to greet me and he is introduced as Dollman. Yes, Dollman. A doll with the soul of a human spirit medium trapped inside, so I guess he's basically a cross between Chucky and Miss Cleo. Dollman immediately tries to spoil one of the biggest twists of the game before Fragile shuts him down, and I have so many questions about Dollman. Does covering his mouth actually have the power to silence him? Does the doll have vocal cords? Can he feel anything without nerve endings? Why are his movements animated to look like stop motion? What the hell is even going on here? But at a certain point, you just have to stop asking questions because this game is clearly not interested in answering them. Tarman tells me he can pilot the ship through the use of his missing hand, which is somehow severed in like part of the tar currents or something. And frankly, I understand this character even less than I do Dollman, and that's really saying something. Everyone here is convinced that a long walk from Mexico to Australia is just what I need to cheer myself up, so I dye my hair with some spray paint real quick because not even the apocalypse is worth sacrificing vanity. Fragile pops in again, and I'm forced to take Dollman along with me since I walk a lonely road, the only road that I've ever known, and I don't know where it goes, but I'm guessing probably to another cutscene. And lo and behold, I plug myself into the BTBB and I'm suddenly thrust into past visions just like in the last game. Why? This memory just shows some guy yelling at me before I get shot, and I'll be honest, this aspect of the game is way less interesting than the stuff with Mads Mikkelsen from the first game, and I won't be spending any time explaining anything about it until I have to, but I promise you'll be just as let down as I am. Despite Dollman saying like 3 minutes ago that he lost his spirit medium powers when he got trapped in doll form, he also still apparently sees my visions, except sometimes later on when he doesn't. So this is yet another aspect of the game that really doesn't make any sense. But whatever, let's head for the magical gate that leads to Australia, because nothing heals emotional trauma like the power of increased download speeds. On approach, I see some red cultist dudes entering the gate from Mexico to Australia, and in hindsight, I'm pretty sure this scene exists only because someone must have realized it would look really stupid if Sam was the first idiot to blindly walk into an interdimensional hole in space-time, and it's only here to show me that it's safe to walk into the portal. So I walk up to say hi to my mirror self, travel to the world between worlds where we catch a glimpse of the old extinction entities from the first game, and voila! Welcome to Australia. I've successfully fast-traveled across continental drift. I immediately get to work bringing the people of Australia the joys of broadband, which also allows the DHV Magellan to navigate the tar currents to my current position. That's pretty handy. I hop on board to meet the last member of my crew, for now, and it turns out to be a mannequin by the name of Charlie. And despite the chiral network being able to produce fully photorealistic projections, this guy goes full robot chicken with a weird animated mouth and stupid eyes. And this is the secret benefactor that Fragile mentioned earlier. And even though his identity is a mystery, this was genuinely my first reaction while I was playing this. Check it out.
But to be clear, I'm not APAS, nor am I your enemy.
So, Die Hardman? That's right, this game is so predictable that I'm blindly guessing at the big twists and reveals that I won't learn about for another 50 hours or so. Because yes, this guy does end up being Die Hardman, and I'm accidentally speedrunning the plot. And if you needed any more evidence that this was Die Hardman before the game drops that bomb on you later, consider this. As a fake mannequin person, Charlie offers me a choice in regards to whose persona he should adopt in any further communications with him. And since my best good friend Deadman just recently offed himself, I thought it would be nice to have him around again. But Charlie decides that's a bad option and makes me pick again. My next choice was Lockney, since I might as well have have a pleasant lady voice to listen to during future expositional scenes, but again, my request was denied. By now, I'm even more convinced that my knee-jerk guess was spot on, as per the original recording of this video, where I openly stated, "I'm pretty confident you're Die Hardman, so..." And then I chose Hartman just to see what would happen, even though I hate Hartman. And of course, this option is also rejected, and once again, this whole dialogue system is rendered useless, as it is now proven that choice is an illusion, and the game will continue to force me to pick whatever singular option it needs me to pick, one way or another. So, Die Hardman it is. Charlie Hardman tells me that Die Hardman is no longer the president of the UCA, despite the last game ending with him being elected as the president of the UCA, but now there's some other corporation called APAC, which oversees another initiative called APAS that has its own president. And if you don't remember which one of those is which 20 seconds from now, don't feel bad, because I don't either. The APAS president tells me that connecting Australia to the Cairo network will open more portals to more continents, leading to more Death Stranding sequels until I eventually have to deliver Wi-Fi to the moon or some shit in Death Stranding 7 Space Truckin'. But as usual, I have no actual choice in the matter, so it's time to head out again. As always, I have another BB vision, and just like last time, this one is utterly meaningless and just shows me some flowers. But more importantly, I'm introduced to a new mechanic that actually does matter, a pseudo perk chart. Now I can use the RAM in my brain or whatever to give myself upgraded skills and whatnot. Is Sam an android? So that's pretty nifty. I drive into a BT area with a new enemy variant called Watchers, which are BTs that can see for whatever reason, and that kinda sucks because they spot me right away and try to eat my tricycle. But it's not that big of a deal since I can just walk like 5 feet away to despawn them and then go get my stuff back, since object permanence is not one of their superpowers, before driving over to the next guy that's desperate for that sweet, sweet embrace of Comcast. For some reason, this guy praises me and says I've been there for him time after time again, and as much as I appreciate his enthusiasm, this is my first time meeting him. But I guess he seems nice enough, so here, have some internet. I play a little Super Barbie dress-up Death Stranding edition and put on a hat that perfectly encapsulates my feelings. Then another watcher tries to eat me on my way to meet a guy named the Lone Commander, but this dude is too stubborn to accept free internet and sends me on a side quest to go steal his stuff back from some more watchers. And honestly, I'm just trying to gauge their field of vision at this point so I can get around them. And it doesn't take too long before we recover his garbage mementos or whatever, and he accepts that life is far worse without the internet because, as I've learned by now, every emotional, political, or supernatural crisis in this world can be solved with Chi-Fi. Chi-Fi? So I hook him up to the network. By this point, I had a look at the Steam achievements to get a feel for what I was up against, and I noticed one right away that I thought would require a lot of time and attention. Maximize your connection with all facilities. So I figured I'd get a jump start on that and spent the next few hours just completing orders for people so I wouldn't have to spend the last 80 hours or so doing nothing but this. I also repaired a mine that I can use to extract and transport materials, which is necessary for a few other achievements, but we'll get more into that later. Until then, my life consisted entirely of hog-tying bandits and watching star meters slowly fill up, so let's jump ahead to when something more interesting happens, shall we? I take another nap on board our ship, dream of my sister mom Amelie kicking off the apocalypse, then plug myself back into my BTBB for yet another meaningless vision of some dude getting shot. And I'm starting to think these visions exist solely because the first game had visions. But most surprising is Dollman asking what happened, since he was able to see my previous vision, but is apparently unable to see this one. And this is what I meant earlier when I said that he's inconsistent, and raises more questions than anything. Tarman tells me that the tar currents are unstable, so I have to go it alone from here, which is funny since that's what I've been doing this whole time already anyway. And this is the point that marks the moment when the game completely gives up on the crew being helpful and just starts saying the tar currents are unstable as their excuse for making me do everything. He also helpfully informs me about some nearby bandits that are wearing armor and head protection, but I'm not remotely concerned since I'm sure there's still no match for a small piece of rope. And would you look at that, rope remains undefeated. After connecting the next place to our Chi-Fi, Tarman says he's got a bad feeling about what's ahead, so thanks for telegraphing that there's a boss fight coming up, I appreciate it. Those red cultist dudes from earlier are waiting for me outside of the next city on my list, and it turns out that they're being led by Higgs from Death Stranding 1, who somehow came back from purgatory even more committed to looking like Hot Topic's Employee of the Month. And he's got a funny little mask that changes its facial expressions, but only when the camera cuts away because I guess animating it probably looked pretty stupid. He says his only goal in life is revenge on me and Fragile for leaving him abandoned in another dimension, and calls me stupid for not knowing anything about my own daughter. But honestly, I'm not sure what he's even all that mad about. He clearly escaped his imprisonment in under a year, and he's already gathered up quite the following. But it seems like he's gonna keep holding a grudge and summons a giant tentacle bot to kill me. What? Okay, this fight is pretty cool. It's cinematic, it has clearly marked weak points in that traditional video gamey kind of way, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and overall feels a lot better than the earlier fight against the giant vagina monster. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and yet I didn't even get hit a single time. And whether that means it's too easy or I'm secretly cracked at this game, I'll leave up to you. With Higgs' robot out of commission, I'm free to connect the city of West Fort Knott to the network, and the president refers to my work as the Chiroverse, and I hate it. But now I have to go back to the ship since, in a shocking twist only M. Night Shyamalan could have written, the tar currents have mysteriously stabilized process the exact moment I've finished doing all the work by myself. Fragile meets me outside of the ship crying about how much of a failure she is, which, to be fair, is a totally reasonable self-assessment considering she's the reason my daughter got murdered. But now she's pretty sure it was Higgs and his men that attacked her at my house, and then keeps blaming herself even further when she reminds me that she had the option to kill Higgs in the last game and opted to show mercy instead. And for once, I don't have a sarcastic rebuttal. She's making some solid points. She is completely and utterly responsible for every bad thing that's happening to me right now. In response, I ask her to try digging up some more information on Lou's past, and as much as I really like Norman Reedus' performance in this game, it's so strange to me that he never really seems to have any reactions to scenes like this. I mean, his daughter got killed, his best friend slash babysitter could have prevented it, and his only response is basically to ask, "Hey, can you Google something for me?" What the hell, man? Maybe he really is an android. This game is already running out of ideas by now as I plug into my BTBB and I'm shown a vision that I've already seen before because apparently even the flashbacks are getting recycled, and Charlie sends me off to reclaim an old mine and build a monorail, which is pretty straightforward and happens without incident. And check it out, I can even hitch a ride on the train back to the city, and as a reward, I'm given some sweet new swag. That lone commander guy from earlier that gave me the sniper rifle now also hands me a silenced tranquilizer pistol and says he once used it to single-handedly take out an entire enemy encampment, and I'm pretty sure he's just Australian Big Boss. After another couple hours of monotonous rapport building with the locals, Fragile finally has some intel on Lou and tells me that despite being issued the designation of BB-28, the original BB-28 was actually incinerated, and Lou was given that duplicate designation to hide the baby from Bridges. And also Lou's mom died in childbirth. So, anyway, time for another nap. Tarman leaves me a copy of Moby Dick to read because I guess Kojima got tired of throwing in random references to Moby Dick all the time and decided to just hand me the source material instead. And inside of the book, I find a picture of Tarman and his son, prompting me to return the photo to him in exchange for some backstory. He says his son is somewhere in the tar currents along with his missing hand, referring to it as a phantom pain. Dude, we get it, you made Metal Gear! And fills me in on how they were fishermen that caught a whale filled to the brim with tar people, which eventually sucked his son down into the depths and took his hand along with it. And then finishes up by saying he originally thought that the tar cat thing was a reincarnation of his son, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And that's the last time we'll ever really mention the cat, and are thus left once again without any answers to the burning question of where the hell this thing came from and why it's here. Connecting this Australian cowboy fella pops the achievement for completing episode 3, and this actually caught me completely off guard since each episode in the first game was very clearly bookended by some important things happening and storylines unraveling. But this one feels much more like the game looked at the clock and went, you've played for long enough, I guess we'll call that the end of the episode. And by this point, I honestly couldn't even tell you where one episode ends and another begins. Cowboy dude sends me literally like 20 feet away to meet the next person, which raises an interesting question. Why couldn't these two have just walked over and introduced themselves? Earlier in the game, when my neighbor got Wi-Fi, it connected the whole region without anyone coming to my house, and that ended with my daughter getting murdered. But apparently these Aussies need a personal courier to cover the distance of a small backyard, but I digress. So I head over and meet a girl dancing in the rain with an umbrella who apparently has the power to reverse the aging caused by the timefall, and in a stunning display of creativity, it turns out her name is Rainey, and despite having no earthly idea who this girl is, she's already got a bag packed and is ready to join my crew on the DHV Magellan. I escort Rainey back to the ship where she and Fragile have a rather tender moment, and I'm like 90% sure that they're into each other, which already makes this the healthiest relationship in the entire franchise. And despite wanting to see more of whatever's going on here, or getting any insight into how these people already know each other, I've got a more pressing matter to attend to. An escaped kangaroo. Turns out the little rascal was the subject of an unspecified science experiment and wandered off into an area prone to brush fires. So I'm given access to something called a tar cannon, which is literally a hose that shoots out tar to extinguish fires. Naturally, the place is already on fire by the time I get there, at which point Charlie Hardman immediately informs me that it's completely useless against a fire this big. Fantastic, I'm glad I brought it along. So there's nothing left to do but run headlong straight into the fire. Fortunately, it appears to be a juvenile kangaroo, since I was beginning to suspect this mission would involve me giving an adult kangaroo a piggyback ride, and I'm able to put it on this anti-gravity pallet and tie it to my waist so it just floats along behind me until I can run away from the blaze and back to the animal sanctuary. With the heroic rescue of the lost kangaroo, the leaders of the animal sanctuary now allow me to connect them to our homebrew ghost net, clearing the way for the DHV Magellan to show up and allow Rainey to do her thing and put out the fires. And I'm starting to wonder why I don't just bring this girl everywhere I go, since it would solve so many problems, like repairing my vehicles and equipment, or, oh, I don't know, putting out forest fires on command. It kind of feels like the game is handing me a walking solution to everything, and then politely asking me to leave it on the ship anyway. Sam only now decides to ask Fragile just who the hell this girl is anyway, despite already knowing she has literal magic powers, and I learned she accidentally summons Timefall every time she steps outside, which led to her entire village going full Salem witch trials on her and running her out of town. With no other options, she decided to join the UCA as a surrogate mother, but still couldn't find a place to call home since, well, I don't really know what happened. I guess the UCA inseminated her and then kicked her ass to the curb? Do they want their babies to die? Why wasn't she given shelter when she enrolled in this pregnancy program? In any case, she eventually gets poached by Fragile, which still doesn't explain why she wasn't just on the Magellan to begin with, and instead had to be tracked down in some random bird sanctuary, and none of this makes any goddamn sense. Oh, and apparently Timefall near her doesn't fast forward things, it makes them rewind, I guess? Sure, why not? Not only that, but she's also suffering from another affliction called stillborn syndrome, in which she is 7 months pregnant, and has been 7 months pregnant for quite some time, wherein the fetus in her belly isn't dead, but just kind of frozen in time or whatever. Charlie Hardman casually drops that restoring the chiral network across Australia may also potentially cure stillborn syndrome, and at this point I really gotta ask, what is the chiral network supposed to be? Because so far it's been a 3D printer, a hologram generator, a teleporter, an interdimensional gateway, the binding glue between souls and bodies, and even governance of the afterlife itself. So what the hell is chiralium supposed to be? You know what? I don't even care. I need a nap anyway. And yet I get even more confused when I wake up to find that damn tar cat sleeping on my pillow. And that only brings up more questions, like how did that cat get in here? The door's closed. And why don't I use that pillow while I'm sleeping? And why do I sleep fully clothed? You know what? That's it. I'm calling it. My theory that Sam is actually an android is hereby confirmed. BTBB shows me another memory in some kind of a war zone, but these visions are still so short and nonsensical that they are basically just reminding me that Death Stranding 1 did it better. So I print myself a new chiralium truck and get back to work. And you know the drill by now. Inventory management, driving, package deliveries, kicking bandits while they're sleeping, expanding my LinkedIn profile, constantly being reminded of things I already know, like how I have to connect all of Australia and how unstable the tar currents can be, and this goes on until at long last I finally reach our next boss fight, which presents itself in the form of this waterfall that pretends like we're friends and gives me a nice friendly thumbs up, until it decides, no wait, I meant thumbs down, and pulls me into whatever that war zone was that I saw in my vision just a minute ago. And that's it for episode 4. Episode 5 starts with some random dudes rolling up on some motorcycles that turn out to be undead zombie soldiers being led by a guy in a bandana. And it's my job to hunt them down in this world that I'm pretty sure is about 80% sparklers. So just like my epic fights with Clifford Unger, I blast my way through the zombies until I reach the big bad French guy, who for some reason puts on his bandana a second time. And as cinematic as this whole thing is, this fight kinda sucks. He teleports around all the time and spams more explosives than the NPCs in Call of Duty World at War, but inevitability catches up with him before too long and I knock him on his ass for the first time, but definitely not the last time. And then his corpse randomly explodes, and I figure now's a good time as any to go rescue the girl that's trapped under a car over there. Except she also explodes, and I wake up in the present day next to a big gold sarcophagus. And that's episode 5 on the books. I waste no time in checking out the fruits of my labor and instantly rev up my power saw to cut right into the fancy golden mummy, only to discover that she bleeds tar, has thorns embedded in her arm, and her tar blood causes rapid accelerated aging effects on Fragile. Ha ha! Take that, you wretched old hag! She also has a tendency to float because gravity is for nerds, and in most of her scenes you can clearly see these little white strings on her like she's a puppet, something the game never bothers to explain, despite her being weirdly central to everything that follows. Fragile says she ran some blood and DNA tests, and I really want you to remember that because it becomes really important later. Dollman speculates that she was born in the land of the dead, which is as good a theory as any at this point, and then they arbitrarily decide to name her Tomorrow, presumably as a dig at her ability to speed up the aging process, and that seems kinda rude. I take a moment to sulk in the shower before heading out to deal with the nearby bandit camp, which I'm told is equipped with powerful new weaponry and advanced damage-resistant armor, and I figure the old rope trick is getting a little boring, so it's time to test out the shotgun. And go figure, these allegedly elite brigands are no match for a face full of pellets, and the combat in this game is a joke. Fragile calls me up to say Tomorrow woke up from her coma or whatever, so I head back to the ship and find Tarantino's wet dream. A skinny blonde girl in booty shorts that doesn't talk, hates shoes, and has something of an oral fixation. Perfection. Charlie gives me a job, and surprise surprise, it's a new delivery mission, and I have to carry a box of tardigrades over to the next city for what appears to be no reason whatsoever other than getting me off the ship so that the game can immediately summon me back to the ship and trigger the next cutscene with Tomorrow, where I get to see them singing about raindrops falling on their heads. And I think this is supposed to be a method to make me feel like we're bonding with these characters, but it's really not doing much for me. Another gatequake strikes off camera, so I have to deliver hundreds of kilos of supplies to West Knot City, and along the way I'm able to capture a rat and deliver it to the animal sanctuary, netting me a quick achievement for doing so. And I spent the next 4 hours doing nothing but delivering packages, and nothing else really happened. So here's the director's cut. I discovered the wonders of ziplining, but didn't learn to fully embrace it as a primary method of travel just yet. More on that later, stick around. I spent way too long trying to find a path to this one prepper's hideout until I figured out I was supposed to spam my sensor and follow the yellow trail of ankle-deep tar to get there. I had some fun playing around with the background photo in my private room and made it a little goal of mine to take some fun pictures for it later because photo mode is probably the best thing about this entire game. I accepted a mission to rescue a guy from bandit camp and let muscle memory take over so that the rope could do all the work, but then I snapped out of it and figured I'd try to have a little fun, so I bombed the hell out of a truck full of people. But it's okay because these grenades somehow just knock people unconscious instead of killing them, so no risk of a void out here, no sir. I picked up an unconscious guy called the Adventurer for the first time, but definitely not the last time, and drove him back to his friend's house, and she thanked me by graciously allowing me to give her free internet access. I exterminated some local anti-gravity beach jellyfish for more stars, I got attacked by some Zubats that drained my battery like those little spiders did at the beginning of the game, and eventually I got bored enough to return to the DHV Magellan to progress the main story a little further, where we see Tomorrow doing her best Lively impression by by running away from all her problems and making no attempt at communicating with anyone around her. I take a breather and read a bit of Moby Dick, and Kojima can't resist self-flating as he triggers yet another fourth wall break before we're called to the bridge for a secret meeting without Tomorrow, which is probably fine since she doesn't talk, so it's not like she'd have much to contribute anyway, and everyone discusses what we should do with Tomorrow. Dollman briefly suggests that she might be happier if she went back to where she came from, or so help me. Everyone else shoots that down and says she'd be safer here, yet somehow this is treated like some huge disagreement. Tomorrow overhears the conversation, runs off into the wilderness, and I genuinely feel like something may have been lost in translation here because I simply can't comprehend how anyone could interpret that discussion as some kind of a heated conflict. That's just called having a conversation. Am I crazy? But I guess it doesn't matter, since the fact remains that she's gone, and we have to go after her. I hop in my trusty off-roader and follow her footprints for what feels like forever, all while Fragile continuously calls me to remind me that I should keep following her. What do you think I'm doing, you stupid fuck? Until suddenly, robots! And now we get the single coolest part of the game, which, unfortunately, the marketing department just had to show everybody, so I'm willing to bet most of you have already seen this. You just didn't have the slightest clue what was going on. But hey, good news! Neither do I. So let's talk about what the hell is happening here. Tomorrow shows up to melt some robots with her tar powers and demonstrates an amazing set of abilities, including freely traversing both the real world and the tar currents, the power to instantly age up and destroy anything her skin touches, exceptional athleticism, and as an added bonus, the music in this scene is top-notch. One thing I don't understand is why she isn't the main character, or why she isn't by my side for the rest of the damn game, because it would make everything so much easier. And this is the second time the game has introduced a character who is essentially a walking, talking solution to all of my problems, but then instantly gets relegated to benchwarming duty back on the ship. Speaking of which, she agrees to come live with us, so I figure now's as good a time as any to grind out some more reputation points. And I spend the next 3.5 hours tackling the local fauna, robbing bandit camps, getting stuck on rocks and terrain because the real enemy of Death Stranding isn't the monsters, it's the landscape, and completing a bunch of side jobs, all of which got me to 5-star ratings in the Western Observatory and Rainy Shelter. Then I finally make my way up to Hartman's lab to progress the main story again, where I am unceremoniously awarded with an achievement for completing episode 6. Thanks, I guess. We walk into Hartman's lab to find him dead as usual and being resuscitated by a shock to the heart, prompting him to show off this fancy new exosuit he got that allows him to die standing up anytime he likes. And for some reason, his heart is on the outside of his body now. It seems his new goal in life is to revisit all the beaches, have a good cry, then sample the tears when he gets back, a task which is handled by this gremlin lady that lives in the walls. And just like Rainey did earlier, he's already got a bag all packed up and is ready to join us on the DHV Magellan, because apparently that's just what we're doing now, collecting crew members like Pokemon without bothering to tell the guy that's running all the logistics for this operation. When exactly was I going to be told about this plan, and why was I left out of it? Regardless, Gremlin Lady pulls out her best Exorcist impression, and I am now convinced that I've seen more than enough of this place. So let's get Captain Cardiac back to the ship. We're spoon-fed another mountain of exposition about the Bridge Baby projects, but absolutely nothing here is important. No new information is revealed, and by the time everyone finally shuts up, we're basically no further ahead than we were when the conversation started. Then Charlie Hardman sends us to meet a guy named the Pizza Chef who turns out to be the director of the Ghost in the Shell movies, which is pretty cool. But anyway, now our job is literally to be a pizza delivery man in order to make people like us enough to sign up for cable. And no, I'm not kidding, that's actually what's happening right now. We get another flashback memory of a weird mark on someone's hand, and that serves as the actual end of episode 6. Excitement? Our first two lucky recipients are the architect and the data scientist, both of whom are quickly linked up to the chiral network, and one of whom is a VTuber for some reason, Pecco. But since neither of these asshats bother leaving me a tip, I vow from now on that my pizza days are behind me. Fragile tells me to come talk to her and Tomorrow, except all that really happens is Tomorrow practices controlling her super aging powers and learning what the word tomorrow means, which is admittedly kind of a rough name to give to somebody that grew up in a place without time, and all Fragile does is tell me to go to bed, so I'm not sure why she even wanted me here in the first place. When I wake up, Rainey gives me a pop quiz, which I immediately fail because I don't care about this at all, but the game just repeats it until I actually pay attention, so I'm forced to sit here and reluctantly engage with what is essentially a kindergarten exam. Meanwhile, our resident VTuber sends me to fight some bandits who have the audacity to try to rob my truck while I'm actively beating up their friends, which feels like a pretty bold career move on their part. Rainey then gives me another test about blocks, and at this point I'm starting to think I'm being evaluated for basic human functionality instead of actual gameplay. And now I come to the most difficult part of the game, unlocking this door that's got a keypad combination. Now, Charlie Hardman already warned me that I have to read the order thoroughly to find the solution to this keypad business, but try as I might, I couldn't find the entry for this prepper in my encyclopedic database for the life of me. But it turns out I was checking the wrong section though, because, silly me, this place isn't listed under the orders section, or the people section, but rather it's down here in the facilities section. Naturally. And that's where the code is hidden, and it's the birthday I entered at the start of the game. So if you've made it this far into the video, congratulations, now you know when my birthday is. Please don't get me anything. Inside, I'm greeted by a bunch of pregnant women with assault rifles led by a doctor named, Doctor. whose defining feature seems to be an unexplained case of backwards hand syndrome that she describes as chiral hands, which she can use to pull unborn babies out of people's bodies without surgery. And then she diagnoses me with a severe case of the SADS before telling me she can rescue babies from mothers with stillborn syndrome and put their kids into BB pods. Except not always, because sometimes they just die anyway. So now she just gathers up all the man-hating pregnant women she can find to defend her office. And even though I'm clearly part of the exact demographic they're afraid of, I have a penis, she lets me wander around and inspect all their guns without a care in the world. She says they're being produced at a nearby weapons factory and needs me to go destroy it, then pulls a bullet out of my torso like Neo did in that shitty Matrix sequel nobody liked, and we're off to the factory. Dr. Mom has a fancy hot spring outside, so I decide to take a nice relaxing dip and put a bucket on my head because I'm allowed to have a little fun every once in a while, goddammit. But then the hot spring suddenly teleports me back to Hartman's lab, where pukey gremlin lady seems surprised that hot tub teleportation worked even though she specifically theorized that it would, then sends me out to dig up another fast travel oasis somewhere else. And while I have zero interest in becoming the world's first post-apocalyptic hot spring travel agent, I already know I'll have to do it at least once because the path to 100% completion is paved with unnecessary hot spring excavations, so I'll get there when I get there. I upgrade my trusty off-roader with some weapons, which turn out to be pretty handy for dealing with the so-called ghost mechs at the factory, so gaining access only takes a few minutes of sitting here and watching my truck do all the work. And part of me kinda wants to keep this place up and running for free guns, but the other part of me is fully aware of how easy and cheap it is to print new guns for myself, so let's just go ahead and blow it up, I guess. But oh no, this was just a trap set by Higgs to lure me out to where he can catch me. He mocks me for being stupid, and I kinda prove his point by asking if he's the one that killed Lou. Obviously! And once again, Kojima looks at his own back catalog and says, hey, you know what this needs? A mysterious cyborg ninja ex machina. And now Higgs has a guitar that shoots lightning. And also it's a sword. Anyway, there's a long fight between these two with a lot of flipping and sliding and loud noises that ends with the ninja cutting off most of Higgs' limbs before Higgs performs a daring escape in his coffin thing, and the ninja vanishes in a puff of smoke. So I'm free to go report my success back to Fragile, who congratulates me on our fighting style, even though we didn't fight anyone. I just watched two other people have a boss battle in front of me. So I go back inside to see Rainy and Tomorrow kicking off their shoes in an effort to predict the weather, and considering this never ever comes up again, I can only assume it's here to appeal to more foot fetish enthusiasts while confirming that Sam is somehow capable of connecting humanity through a post-apocalyptic internet service provider, but still hasn't figured out that you need to untie your boots before taking them off, so let's just go back to bed. The next day I decide I need to get back to the reputation grind and spend the next couple hours proving that positive reviews are the primary backbone of rebuilding civilization, earning myself 5 stars in West Fort Knott, the Lone Commander, and the Musician, before taking another well-deserved rest so that I can recover my stamina, after which I also get 5 stars at both the Animal Shelter and the F2 South Distribution Center, while also expanding our coverage to people like the Mechanic and the Pioneer. While doing my rounds, I pay another visit to the Pizza Chef and discover I'm able to walk right through the front door, and inside I find another small munitions factory along with a couple of ghost mechs, and a general atmosphere that just screams OSHA violation. In the back room I find the Pizza Chef himself, who immediately attacks me in his kitchen while somehow still perfectly cooking some kind of weird little octopus pizza. I mean, this dude is throwing hands, operating the oven, boxing up some perfect pies, all as if this were just another Tuesday. And after this incredibly bizarre culinary assault, he offers me not 1, but 2 free pizzas before sending me on my way. And after the ghost mechs, the kitchen brawl, and the complimentary 2 pizza combo meal, I only have one question on my mind. What the fuck just happened? I get an achievement for learning the truth about the Pizza Chef, which is nice, and then some bandits blow up my truck, which is decidedly not nice, and I have to spend like 30 minutes reorganizing all my cargo by hand. And after that, it's another 3 hours of volunteer mailman duty, during which I grab 5-star ranks at the Inventor, Rainbow Valley, and the Dowser, which finally puts me in double digits for facilities completed. So that's 10 down and only, oh god, 32 to go. The Pioneer gives me a wicked awesome camel hat. Isn't it adorable? And I pick up another 5 stars at Hartman's lab, and then I finally get bored enough to head back to my ship and push the main story forward. And amazingly, against all odds, in this game with 80 hours of filler content and a story that seems allergic to progress, I'm hit with an intermission in the middle of episode 7 where I'm forced to participate in a group photo shoot where only the women are invited, for reasons I assume have nothing to do with the marketing department over at Kojima Productions. Fun fact, this is also the only time in the whole game where the map for the ship becomes useful, and by useful I mean I get to choose the room for the photo shoot despite having absolutely no idea what any of the rooms look like. And once the ladies have had their glamour shot taken, it's time to get back to work and perfect my review score over at the government base, drive up some mountains, immediately fall off those mountains and ruin my cargo, and finally close out episode 7 by bringing East Fort Knott online. The president of APAS calls me up to tell me I now have 50% of Australia hooked up to the network, and that's 30 hours of my time well spent so far. Then Tarman cuts in by saying, you guessed it, the tar currents are unstable and we can't go anywhere. That big tar curtain mirror thing from earlier rears its ugly face and pulls me inside so I can meet Big Bad Frenchie for a second showdown. Only this time I'm underwater, so I get to experience its moon physics. This is pretty much a carbon copy of the first fight I had with Frenchie, so it doesn't take long before I'm able to grenade the hell out of him until he dies. Or re-dies, I guess, since they're all zombies or whatever. So I snatch his ID to take back home and open up his little handbag to find a baby doll bomb inside, which explodes and sends me back to present day, and wouldn't you know it, the tar currents have been stabilized again. Fragile inspects the ID I brought back and tells me his name is Neil Vanna, and he died in a void out that wiped out an entire city, which just so happens to be the same void out I survived all those years ago that was apparently caused by my wife's body decaying. The plot thickens. I get a glimpse of Tomorrow still sucking at manipulating her time powers, and she can't even take a bite out of an apple without killing it, and I leave without either of us saying a word to one another because nothing builds an emotional connection quite like complete silence. So I go plug myself into BTBB, who shows me another glimpse of Neil Vanna's past where he's using his ID to try to get past some heavily armored security guards, and I really can't overstate just how pointless these little flashbacks are. At least with Cliff Unger in the first game, the visions gradually revealed a new piece of the story each time they were unfolding, but these on the other hand are just random snippets that don't mean anything until I'm shown the full unedited sequence way later on, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My next destination is way up in the snowy mountains that take up half the map, and I figure I'll keep driving my big truck around since it can hold a ton of cargo, and I start my winter adventures by bringing the chronobiologist into the network, but then quickly get summoned back to the ship where Fragile and Charlie tell me that my wife Lucy was Neil's therapist and she was pregnant with Neil's child. While this is a shocking revelation to me, Sam says she already told him about the affair and just kinda shrugs it off before walking away, and it's a really strange reaction seeing as to how his whole character arc in the first game revolved around his sense of loss and failure after the death of Lucy and his unborn child, which makes this feel less like a natural revelation and more like a late addition that doesn't really fit the Sam that we already spent an entire game getting to know. Rainey comes up with another dumbass math problem for me to solve, and since this isn't remotely close to the reason I play video games, I just googled the answer because I'm not interested in doing recreational geometry, and if anyone's wondering, the answer is BACD. You're welcome. We get a vision of Lucy looking at the scar on Neil's hand, and it's pretty convenient how the visions suddenly decide to include Lucy only after we've learned elsewhere that she and Neil are connected, so I deal with my emotional baggage the only way I know how, tackling wild emus and spreading the holy gospel of the chiral network, starting with the girl that wanted the emu. This random stretch of road suddenly lifts me up into the sky and transforms itself into a racetrack, and then a bunch of ghost mech motorcycles show up to kill me, and this part is genuinely badass as hell. I mean, come on, look at this. Bullets are flying, bikes are exploding, I'm surrounded by chaos and pumping pure adrenaline. I could spend all day tearing around up here and hunting these bastards down. This is exactly the kind of stupid, over-the-top, balls-to-the-wall gameplay I signed up for. Give me more of this fucking rules. And with the phantom bikers taken care of, it's back to boredom. The ghost hunter agrees to get some Wi-Fi, so I get back to doing my rounds, and at one point decide to try out a shortcut off the mountain. It does not go well. Well, back to walking, I guess. The F5 East Distribution Center joins the party next, and I take a breather to see how Tomorrow's training is coming along, and I can't help but think she sure is wasting a whole lot of food here, but hey, at least this time she actually called me by name. Progress? Fragile and Tarman send me to take out a ghost mech factory, which is always a welcome reprieve from the daily delivery grind, so I make that my top priority and deck myself out in enough weapons to make Sam look less like a mailman and more like a walking military surplus store before heading out to wreak some havoc. The mechs here spawn infinitely until I disable these big fabricators, so it's a pretty hectic dash around the place trying to hack into all these things while taking out the robots as I go. But is there any job Sam can't handle? Well, I don't think so. Tarman accuses APAC of being involved with the production of the mechs we just blew up, which, if you can be bothered to remember, is the organization that the president presides over, so Fragile immediately jumps to the conclusion that Higgs and APAC are working together. They also recover blueprints for outfitting the ghost mechs with rocket launchers, which makes Tarman decide we need to start building our own countermeasures on the DHV Magellan, and you'll never guess who gets to go pick up all the supplies for that project. I head out to expand our coverage a bit more, and while the fisherman doesn't give me any trouble and joins us right away, the adventure is another story entirely because only his son is home, and apparently he's incapable of making decisions without parental supervision, so I have to go save his dad from a mountaintop. And after a tortuously slow trek uphill through the snow, both ways, I find an unconscious moron way up on the rocks, and hey, this is the same unconscious moron I had to rescue earlier. So I zip him up in a body bag and carry his ass back home for the second time, but definitely not the last time. And despite the fact that he's been comatose for God knows how long, he wakes up as soon as he gets inside and graciously permits me to connect him to the chiral network. Fragile calls me back to the ship yet again, and it looks like Tomorrow's finally got a grasp on how to eat an apple, but we're sliding back in the non-verbal territory, so I just go to bed. There's a bang on the door in the middle of the night, and when I check it out, I find Dr. D-Fib's corpse shambling around, but it's actually Deadman controlling Hartman's body during his periodic 3-minute death sequences, and he even managed to temporarily add his old lobotomy scars to Hartman's forehead. How the hell? Turns out that Deadman is the one that's been feeding us intel about Lou from the other side, but then casually admits he's the one that originally falsified Lou's BB records, then changed his mind and decided the best course of action was to die so that he could go to the beach because, and I quote, security isn't as strict. And seriously, what the hell is chiralium? Just as this is picking up though, Hartman's defibrillator brings him back to life, and we leave Dollman with him to explain what just happened happened because I'm way too tired for this shit, and that's the end of episode 8. We open episode 9 by bringing the Eastern Environmental Observatory online, which is by far the worst prepper facility to reach since it's literally right at the top of one of the tallest mountain peaks in the game, and I'm constantly suffocating from a lack of oxygen, and everything sucks. The president of APAS calls and tells us we're now sitting at 75% coverage for the continent, and getting it up to 100% should open up another plate gate, leaving it wide open for a Death Stranding 3, and so help me God, if I have to play that. Fragile asked me to take Rainey over to that army of pregnant chicks so she can get a quick checkup from the motherhood doctor. Then the president calls me back on a private line to say that the accusations against him are outrageous, and it's actually the UCA pulling the strings, and this is quickly devolving into a bunch of childish finger pointing, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but can you please let me get back to making deliveries? After a quick stop to dig out a hot spring for an achievement, I escort Rainey down to the motherhood where she's told her baby is frozen in time, which, yeah, we already knew that. Thanks. Then Dr. Mom asks to see my BB pod again to check its serial number and gives the thing a colonoscopy to reveal I've been carrying the original BB00 this whole time, meaning Lou was born 11 years ago, the very same day as the void out that wiped out an entire city, killing my family as well as Neil Vienna. And it's pretty telling how this random lady in a bunker in the middle of nowhere has been able to provide more information about Lou's origins than all my crewmates back on the Magellan. Speaking of my crew, they're busy singing that goddamn song to each other again while I'm out doing all the work, and they have the audacity to make fun of me for being off tune. But at least Tarman offers to take me to our next destination on the ship, but abruptly reminds me that the tar currents are unstable. You don't say. So it'll be a bumpy ride. We head down into the tar where Tarman loses track of his tar hand and completely loses control of the ship because we're apparently being dragged down by some unknown creature. Then Higgs pops into the cockpit with his guitar since I guess he must have heard we're a pretty musically inclined group of little misfits, but Tomorrow doesn't take too kindly to having new bandmates and flings off her shoes, puts on her glam rock face paint, and starts floating around through the air and pulling his limbs off like a cruel child torturing a spider. Handless Higgs runs away and everyone leaves me to deal with the monster outside, except it's not some brand new BT or anything, it's the exact same giant robot octopus I already destroyed once before. So I gear myself up with a ton of weapons and start tearing that thing apart for the second time, but definitely not the last time. This is another cool fight, but it's exactly the same as the first time I wrecked this thing, so there's really no need to go into any detail here. Suffice to say, I blew up all of its arms, our ship made it back to the surface world safely, and I've earned myself a nice bit of R&R. The ladies all head off on their own to pick up some stuff to fix the ship, reminding me once again that I'm not allowed to get any help from them, even though they are all objectively stronger than me, but at least they're doing something to contribute for once. Charlie Hardman calls us up to tell us we have to press onward despite the ship being rendered immobile from the fight, and we'll have to go without any backup from him. And I'm not sure why he's making such a big deal out of it, since that's been my entire experience with the whole game so far. So I spend the next hour driving around mountains, killing BTs in the snow, connecting people like the Phantom Smith to the network, and eventually reach my primary goal of South Fort Knot, where the president says we have now connected 85% of Australia, and then continues his campaign to convince me Charlie Hardman is secretly the real villain behind all of this. Captain Cardiac wakes me up and exposits for a while about how the original plan for the network was just to use one core bridge baby instead of 9, and when that plan got scrapped, BB00 is shoved into storage and later redesignated as BB28, but the reason behind letting the poor kid rot in a closet for 11 years remains a mystery. Tarman finds his tar hand and says the ship is operational, but he wants to upgrade the cannons, so I unsurprisingly gotta go deliver the upgrades for him. We are treated to another short vision of Lucy telling Neil that she's pregnant with his child, and after Hartman dies again, Deadman takes over his body to tell me it was actually my sister mom, Amelie, that falsified the records declaring Lou had been disposed of back when she was known as BB00. I deliver the supplies back to Tarman and have a goofy nightmare about a haunted doll man being in my BB pod or some shit, so I clear my head with my usual routine of inventory management and robot homicide before bringing the Southern Environmental Observatory into the chiral network. But I guess Higgs is getting tired of me dismantling his robot army every step of the way, so he swings by to set me on fire with his lightning guitar. But this isn't just any fire, it's magic fire that reignites anytime I die and come back to life, trapping me in a never-ending cycle of suffering and death. And I gotta give him props here, that's a pretty solid way to deal with this situation. I thought maybe if I didn't repatriate myself, something different might happen, but no, I have to just keep dying and coming back and dying again over and over and over. And even getting a short but obvious throwback to the Metal Gear Solid 4 microwave scene where you have to mash a button real fast to crawl forward, and I'd honestly rather be playing that right now. And hey, I will be soon, it's coming out for PC on August 27th. Are you excited? I know I am. My lady friends eventually show up on Fragile's trusty unicycle to help save the day, and she just kinda sits back and watches me roast like a marshmallow someone dropped in a campfire, while Tomorrow goes toe-to-toe with Higgs. And even though she's already easily defeated this Mecha Higgs form multiple times now, they seem evenly matched for whatever reason until the Magellan shows up with its fancy new cannon and blows them all to Kingdom Come. With Higgs gone for now, Tomorrow comes over and joins the Sam Bridges barbecue before someone other than me finally remembers that we literally have someone on our team that magically produces rain wherever she goes. And since water is historically known to have the ability to extinguish fires, Rainey saunters her way over to give me a hand with that whole burning to death repeatedly thing I got going on. Better late than never, I guess. And as if being burned alive a couple dozen times wasn't enough to put a damper on my day, Dollman decides that now is a good time to dropped the bombshell that my BB pod has been empty this entire time, and he was enlisted as a therapist to help me process my grief after Lou's death. And I find this part a bit silly since, I already knew Lou was dead, and I think the weight of this overall reveal doesn't land quite as hard as the game thinks it does. But hats off to Norman Reedus and the animators for genuinely making Sam's pain and denial feel totally real. Well, alright guys, I know I've been talking a lot, and I think we both need a break from the sound of my stupid voice. So how about I go get a drink and we just play a montage that covers the next 10 hours? Cool? Yeah? Alright, I'll be right back. Oh, hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for waiting. I hope you really liked episode 10 there. I'm not kidding when I say that was about 10 hours of my life. But anyway, moving on. Episode 11 is another tar current area where I get swallowed by the void and spat out in an old metro station filled with anti-gravity cars and tons of zombies that can walk on the ceiling. But other than that, it's pretty run-of-the-mill. Shoot the bad guys, keep your eyes on the skies, and blast Neil in his stupid French face until he teleports away. This one doesn't end there though, not before another customary flashback where I get to see Neil and Lucy as kids getting trapped in the BT war zone. And while she's considerate enough to help him when he falls, he returns the favor by making the decision any real man would make and leaves Lucy behind when it's her turn to get trapped under some rubble. What a legend. I have to chase him down through the train cars before he unceremoniously tries to get rid of me by flipping the world around, and now it's my turn to run along the ceiling to make my escape. I catch up with him before he goes back to his teleport and shoot method of communication, to which I reply with a multitude of rockets to the face, and that spells the end for Big Bad Frenchie once and for all. And just like with Cliffhanger in the first game, I finally decide that, hey, maybe I can just talk to the guy, and he apologizes to me and hands me a necklace before dying, I guess? Despite already being dead? Whatever, now I get what's almost the full story of Neil and Lucy. I'm instantly flabbergasted by the very first frame of this memory sequence. Lucy might have the stupidest office setup I've ever seen. Her desk is perpendicular to the door, and her monitor's in full view of anyone that walks in, which I think would violate any confidentiality agreements she has with her patients. And I know I'm rambling right now, and I'm sorry, but this really bothers me. And then it only gets worse because without exchanging a single word, Neil walks in and tries to light up a cigarette. Who the hell walks into somebody else's office and immediately starts smoking? I'll tell you who. Neil Vanna, the biggest asshole on the planet, that's who. And if you're thinking that maybe they already know one another, well, she starts the session by confirming his name and asking what he does for a living. So no, this is definitely his first time here, and he's a hugely inconsiderate prick. Okay, I gotta move past this intro, it's really driving me crazy. They have an entire therapy session before Lucy reveals that she's the kid that he left behind during that crazy BT attack. And then we cut to Neil in some kind of interrogation room where some fed is threatening him and trying to force him to do some extra work as a porter, before cutting over to another therapy session during which he admits that his job is to smuggle brain-dead pregnant women across the Mexican border so that Bridges can experiment on them. And this is where the BBs are coming from. In a future session, we come to understand that Lucy and Neil have become lovers in the nighttime, and she reveals that she's pregnant with Sam's baby, my baby, and since that would be the first child of a repatriate, she's afraid that Bridges will cut the thing out of her for their experimentation. And then she breaks up with Neil, saying this is all a mistake, and in typical Death Stranding fashion, the game won't be showing us the rest of the scene until much later. After a nice refreshing depression shower to wash away the thoughts of my cheating therapist ex-wife, Fragile barges barges into my room and says she finished recovering the data from the memory drive that was hidden inside the necklace. And the information proves beyond a doubt that she was actually pregnant with my child and not Neil's. And the whole thing about it being Neil's kid was a lie she made up in a feeble attempt to prevent Bridges from taking her baby away. Don't get me wrong, she's still a filthy liar, but I guess at least she didn't get her ego prego by some other dude. I'm not sure if that really counts for anything though. Our ship comes under attack by more ghost mechs, so we all regroup on the bridge to go over the game plan, and it's a simple one. Everyone else stay on board the ship while I go outside alone to handle the threat. Sounds fair. They even make a point to say they'll be perfectly safe from the evil robots in here while I'm fighting out there, so I gear up and head out, and that's one more episode completed. The president rings us up and tells us there's more evidence of not just one, but 3 new plague gates emerging as a result of our efforts, which means we are cocked, locked, and ready to rock for 3 Death Stranding sequels, and boy howdy, I can't wait. All I have to do to make this happen is to walk down the street, except the street is guarded by dozens of ghost mechs intent on running the world's most aggressive neighborhood watch program. My crew isn't totally useless though. Tomorrow helms the miniguns inside and mows down any robots that get too close to me, and I'm able to designate a target for that giant cannon, though it does have a 10-second delay, which is roughly 9 seconds longer than I'd like to wait for an artillery strike, so I didn't find it all that useful. The ship can also only fire within a certain range, so our job is to push forward through the bots and connect the relays as we go until we reach the main city. So basically, we're leapfrogging our way across the battlefield in order to extend the ship's Wi-Fi coverage until we get there. Each relay allows the Magellan to move in closer to provide me cover, which is admittedly pretty handy considering the sheer volume of enemies around, and after setting up the first relay, I reached the next obstacle. And this is exactly what Smokey the Bear spent all those years warning us about. Why didn't anybody listen? I'm able to sneak up to the next relay without really fighting anyone, and connecting this one allows the ship to relocate once again, which lets Rainey step out and do what she does best, put out fires by existing relatively close to them. And now I've got a clear path to Terminal Fort Knot. Well, clear except for the billion mechs patrolling around. You know what I mean. But it ain't a problem that can't be solved by a couple hundred more rockets. There's a literal army of these things waiting for me on the bridge, but fortunately I don't have to deal with them all myself since that cyborg ninja shows up again and wipes them all out. And he unzips his face mask thing to reveal Deadman's body inside, and this is one of the most hilariously stupid things I've ever seen. Cyborg Ninja is just a dead fat guy in a latex onesie. Anyway, Deadman's corpse tells us he's gonna go take out the bridge to keep the rest of the ghost mechs at bay, which is pretty impressive considering his mouth isn't moving and, you know, he's dead. So I guess he's got chiral Bluetooth or some shit, I don't know. He cuts the bridge in half and leaves me to go it alone from here, which is what I've been doing the whole time anyway, and goddammit, that robot octopus is back again. Round 3 with Octomech is a good bit easier than the last 2, mostly because it keeps itself latched onto the bridge supports and doesn't really move much aside from tossing the occasional car at my head. And the only real challenge is just trying to get a clean shot on its weak points. So, cool fight I guess, but it really would have been better if we got some more unique bosses throughout the game instead of just wheeling this guy out every couple hours. Octomech disintegrates after this one though, so I don't think there's going to be a round 4, and that leaves us free to hook up Terminal Fort Knot with our homebrew Ki-Fi. Welcome to the family, guys. Sorry about your bridge. Higgs ambushes us at the city entrance but gets instantly cut in half by the Magellan, and by my count that's now 7 limbs that he's lost. He takes credit for shooting Fragile and killing Luz, so Fragile freaks out and takes his laser guitar and lets him ride the lightning for a while before setting him on fire, but that doesn't seem super effective since he just starts laughing and singing until she bashes his robo-brains in. The president summons me to the bridge and praises my efforts for connecting the entirety of Australia, and then tells me it was him that built the mech army and allowed Higgs to come into power as a way to motivate me to build the Chiral network for him. And it turns out he's not even a real person, but rather the pseudo-metaphysical embodiment of a combination of 4,000 dead people and a bunch of online servers that all share a beach after they were collectively destroyed in a void out. What the fuck did I just say? And apparently they believe that the extinction events are an important part of natural selection. So Amelie's decision to change her so-called destiny has thrown evolution itself off course since Mother Nature keeps trying to say it's time for humanity to call it quits. I'm teleported over to the president's beach where it's lined with all the APAS servers, and he monologues for a while about his master plan in which humans are destined to leave behind their physical bodies and join the Chiral-verse under his control. And if you think all of that came straight out of left field, make sure you're sitting down for this next part. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna let this clip play before I say anything at all so you can fully grasp exactly what I'm dealing with here.
I'm not about to let that happen. See the sunset, the day is ending. Let that yawn now. There's no pretending. I will hold you and protect you.
So, yeah, that's a thing that happened. Turns out Charlie was Die Hardman the whole time. Who could have predicted that? So, Die Hardman? Yeah, that was a tough one. Anyway, that's the end of episode 12. Jesus Christ. Die Hardman reveals he knew all about President Beach's plan, and he's been secretly working against him this whole time. And of course, Kojima has to have his silly wordplay games as he reveals that DHV Magellan really stands for Die Hardman Vessel, and I hate this game. He uses my magic anti-gravity necklace to connect all the continents, whatever that means, and disintegrates President Beach, severing the connection between his beach and our world. So, just to clarify, everything we've done up until this point has been carefully engineered by an otherworldly, interdimensional being set on bringing about the end of humanity, and then everything that being was doing was being manipulated by Die Hardman, and now that conflict is just over. Did I got that right? I think I got that right. Oh, but we're not finished yet. Higgs shows up in Cyborg Ninja's outfit and says that this was actually all his plan, and then effortlessly takes Tomorrow captive even though there's not a chance in hell he could take her in a fight. And now, I know what you're asking yourself right now. Why am I still watching this video? Why is he after Tomorrow? I thought he just wanted revenge against me and Fragile. Well, he needed a connection to Amelie's beach so he could travel there and kickstart the next extinction. And oh yeah, Tomorrow's a new extinction entity, and oh yeah, Tomorrow's my daughter. What the actual fuck? Before we can even begin to process this bombardment of plot twists, Higgs and Tomorrow vanish into the tar, taunting us to follow him, so of course that's what we're gonna do. Captain Cardiac kills himself again so he can go try to find Tomorrow on a beach somewhere, and Fragile says that the DNA test proved that she is in fact my daughter, which is a fascinating revelation considering she literally ran a DNA test on her when we first met her, so how in the hell did this not come up sooner? Regardless, we have to go find our way to whatever beach Higgs ran off to, and to do that we need to focus our energy on connecting with Amelie's Dreamcatcher necklace or whatever, and that wraps up episode 13. And yes, that episode was pretty much just a series of cutscenes. Now, there's one point in Death Stranding 1 that really pissed me off. In that one, you spent most of the game traveling from Washington, D.C. all the way to the California coast, and then when you get there, they tell you to turn your ass around and walk all the way back. And since Death Stranding 2 is basically the same exact game, we are now told to go back to Mexico. And don't you dare think about taking the Magellan, because you know damn well those tar currents are too unstable for that. So I print myself a new tricycle and I head for the plate gate. It's snowing in Mexico and the sky has turned into the ocean. While I was trying to record some nice scenic footage of more boring driving, I got my trikey stuck on a rock and then a giant BT hand crawled out of the ground and ate it, so I just walked the rest of the way until I encountered a giant crab BT. This guy is kinda like Octomech on steroids, since instead of throwing just one car at a time, he throws the whole parking lot and also summons some other BTs as backup. But the general goal here is to kneecap it with some rockets until it falls down and then unload on its exposed brain cap. So it only takes a few minutes before we're able to add the crab god to our crystal collection. Easy peasy. Tarman says we need a physical object that connects us to Amelie, so we head back to our old ransacked apartment and have some more hallucinations of our happier days with Lou, then dig through some drawers until I find the old family photo from the first game. And then I'm immediately reminded of how much this game hates me when the Magellan lands right outside my front door, meaning there was no rush for me to get here and I could have just waited for the tar currents to stabilize instead of walking across 1.5 continents. But that's Death Stranding for you. Our crew has to combine their psychic powers like Captain Planet to have enough energy to teleport to Higgs, and Fragile shoves her tongue down my throat, and this is another moment that I really want you to remember because, ew. So we drive through the tar ocean and find ourselves back on the President's Beach, judging by all the APAS servers around. But I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just like a secondary APAS beach. In any case, this place is littered with giant BTs flying around, and Fragile tells me to take the guitar she stole from Higgs because it's the perfect weapon for this place. And with that, we're moving on to episode 15. This section is so stunning that it almost makes you forget that you had to spend 50 hours walking around doing menial tasks to get here. But better late than never, I guess. All I really have to do is run down the beach and watch the spectacle going on behind me, and we get to see where these weird non-sea creature-based BTs are coming from. And it's these giant humanoid BTs that can split themselves apart into separate BTs like hands, head, and wings? Sure, fine. Whatever makes you happy. Tarman seems to be kind of a terrible pilot though, since he flies directly into one of the giant dudes and gets us all captured. But Deadman's ghost shows up to help us out, so the Magellan blows off a BT's head and Deadman takes control of the BT so that he can wear the Magellan like a hat. And now that it's got legs, the Magellan is officially a Metal Gear. Kojima, you've done it again. I kept getting distracted while running down the beach because I'm supposed to be dodging all these whales and suicide tar people or whatever, but I was too busy trying to watch Metal Gear Magellan kick a ton of BT monster ass. And now Higgs is here in full cyborg ninja garb and it's time for a duel. The only weapon in my arsenal is Higgs' old guitar and I'm forced to use that, and it's pretty slow and clunky, but luckily, so is he, and this fight is pretty boring, so I spent a lot of my time here still just trying to watch the background footage of the Magellan. Higgs melts down into the tar and changes his outfit into something a little more rock star, and hey, he's got a new guitar, and it's got 2 necks for double the lightning. This battle is less of a duel and more of a game of hide and seek, where all I have to do is wander through these rows of servers and shoot Higgs whenever I see him, until he summons one of those giant humanoid BTs, at which point I wander through these rows of servers and shoot Higgs whenever I see him. Riveting. Luckily, Higgs correctly identifies what the problem here is. We're not dressed for the occasion, so he rips my shirt off and quotes Big Boss
Kept you waiting, huh?
before challenging me to a battle of the bands. And by this point, I am 100% convinced that Kojima's just trolling me now. This whole mano-a-mano fight with Higgs is really just a lot of button mashing and electric guitar solos before devolving even further into the Big Boss vs. Ocelot fight at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, when both dudes got worn out and just threw haymakers back and forth for a while. Once he's finally down for the count, the world behind us splits apart and giant baby Lou appears. Higgs tries to sing her a lullaby, and she does what any baby would do in this situation. She eats him, and then spits out his mask as a keepsake for us before sprouting BT wings and flying away. All the other BTs around Metal Gear Magellan die off, Black and White Fragile brings me a baby, Amelie gives me a hug, and my ship flies over to pick me up. And that's a wrap on episode 15. Episode 16 starts the same way episode 1 did, except now I'm running along snowy mountains instead of rocky mountains. But at least I got Lou back. I soak in the scenery again as I make my way home, only to be very rudely interrupted by the Magellan, which snaps me back to reality as I find Tomorrow passed out on the beach in front of me. So I carry her back to the ship, where the crew decides now is a good time to drop another random meaningless plot twist in my lap. Fragile is dead. Not only is she dead, but she's been dead since like episode 1. Remember when we made out like 5 minutes ago? Yeah, she was dead there too. She died back when she tried to jump Lou to safety after Higgs invaded my house and he shot her in the face on the beach mid-jump. And between sheer stubbornness, her connection to Sam and Lou, and the beach itself just being a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, she was somehow able to force her body to keep on going despite being fully aware that she'd been murdered. But I don't think that gives her the right to turn me into a necrophile. But what am I gonna do, complain to HR? No, the best I can do is take another depression shower, after which Fragile's ghost swings by for a visit to say she left Lou in the land of the dead because it seemed safer than leaving her near Higgs. And then she apologizes for making Lou spend her formative years in that dimension, and then disappears, because she's dead and this ain't her problem anymore, leaving me to deal with the consequences. Thanks a lot, Fragile. Die Hardman tells us it's time to go home, so we have to Captain Planet our way through the beach again. And now the game finally reveals what happened between Neil and our cheating wife Lucy. The truth is that she was indeed pregnant with my child, but since Bridges wanted the first child of a repatriate to serve as the core bridge baby to establish the chiral network, her plan was to tell everyone that it was actually Neil's baby. And even though he got dumped and humiliated by his own therapist, Neil agrees to help and says he can smuggle her across the border into Mexico. But just like with Mads Mikkelsen in the first game, they make it about 10 steps before getting stopped by security and Lucy gets shot, Neil gets killed, and Bridges cuts Lou out of Lucy's body before Neil's body rapidly starts necrotizing, though I'm not entirely sure why. Sam shows up to retrieve Lucy's remains and gets caught in the void out, resulting in the destruction of the entire city and everyone within. On the beach, Fragile jumps with Lou to escape Higgs and ends up delivering the baby to Neil's soul, who takes it upon himself to raise Lou in the land of the dead. And that's pretty much the whole story. Now that everyone remembers everything, Sam and Lou are finally reunited as family, and I can't help but think this moment should have had a much bigger impact on me as the player. But considering these two characters haven't really spoken more than 5 words to one another or spent more than 15 seconds together on screen, I really just feel disconnected from this whole thing, and that's the end of both episode 16 and the game's main story. Ladies and gentlemen, we did it! There's a mid-credit scene where Tomorrow stole Fragile's magic hand necklace thing and starts making her way through the new plate gate, setting her up as the next playable character for Death Stranding 3, and God help me if that ever comes out because I don't know if I can handle another one of these games. But it's not over yet. I'm getting 100% completion, remember? We have so much more to do! But first, the game is kind enough to show me just how much time I've wasted and what exactly I've been wasting that time on. And it took me just shy of 57 hours to finish this semi-casual story playthrough, during which I delivered 1,124 packages to 40 different facilities for a total of 206,019 Facebook likes. Let's see how much worse these numbers get after I finish unlocking all the achievements. Knowing that I had to 5-star all 42 facilities in the game to achieve perfection, I printed out a disgustingly beautiful pink and yellow truck and got to work. I built a vast empire of roads, bridges, and mines, got 5 stars for the Phantom Smith, systematically exterminated all the BTs I could find since postgame has a really handy feature where you can basically disconnect the real world from the beach world to prevent supernatural enemies like BTs and ghost mechs from respawning, blew up my disgustingly beautiful pink truck while I was driving around the mountains, connected a new place called BPAS to the network, met a pair of douchebags calling themselves Mr. Impossible who sent me to retrieve an action figure from a BT-infested warehouse, but it was way high up in the rafters and I couldn't get up there and shooting it only damaged it instead of knocking it down, so I had to leave and go fabricate a ladder and then come back and fight with the ridiculously terrible placement tool before I can get up there and retrieve the stupid thing. But returning the figure let me connect them to our local Ki-Fi, and that unlocked the Keep On Connecting achievement for hooking up all 42 facilities. And now, we just need to 5-star them. All of them. one by one. Well, alrighty then. 5 stars at the Pioneer, South Fort Knott, and the Chronobiologist. Donezo. I accidentally got another achievement here when I tried delivering some supplies to the Ghost Hunter, but apparently he's pulling a Fragile and he's also been dead the whole time, so I have to turn off the drawbridge feature to make him spawn in, which unlocked the real story of the Ghost Hunter achievement. I killed a trio of tentacle dog BTs, which was pretty cool since I remember these guys from the first game, but I'd never actually fought one before this moment, and it was good to remind myself that I actually was the Rambo of mailmen. And I figured, hey, why stop there? So I went off to kill one of those big human hand BTs while I was at it to really establish my supremacy over this world. I noticed there was an achievement for delivering an albino animal to the sanctuary, so I started capturing all the animals I saw and getting frustrated when I got one that wasn't albino. And I didn't feel like driving regular ass boring animals all the way back for no reason, so I found more creative ways of dealing with them. But after like 45 minutes of driving around the desert and expanding all my roadways, I spotted an albino kangaroo and promptly tackled it, stuffed it into a box for delivery, and after a long drive I was able to unlock the Rare Specimen Rescuer achievement, after which I thought a change of scenery might break up the monotony, and I decided to head back to Mexico. I started building one of everything outside the Baca shelter for the Master Builder achievement later on, so to anyone that stumbled across my random assortment of nonsensical construction projects, I apologize, but it was necessary. And I forgot that I could deconstruct stuff after I built it, so you'll just have to deal with it. After that, I 5-starred all the Mexican preppers, Villa Libre, the former Geophysics Research Lab, the Baca, the C1 South Distribution Center, the Artist, and Ciudad Nudo del Norte, bringing my completed shelter count up to a total of 26 out of 42. I also snagged the Emergency Worker achievement while I was out here by fixing some random chiral bridge someone else had built, and with nothing left to do in Mexico, it was time to get back on the road to Australia. My next job was to take out the Lord of Tar Lake, and there's something I need to explain here before I get on with it. There's another feature in this game that I didn't bother using until now involving a weapon called the Capture Grenade. If you weaken a large BT and throw one of these into its mouth, it'll turn into white crystals instead of gold crystals, and then I can use those white crystals to summon it in other fights against BTs later on. And the Lord of Tar Lake quest requires me to get purposefully caught by a watcher so that I can capture the catcher that spawns out of the tar. This was extremely frustrating, to say the least. Getting caught isn't exactly difficult since it involves, just standing there until one of the bad guys notices me, but it also requires me to just let the tar people drag me down. And every time that happens, Sam falls down and drops all the cargo that's on his back, and then gets dragged away to some random location for the battle. And since I'm stupid, I kept dropping the goddamn capture grenade I needed to finish this fight properly because I had it on my back instead of attached to my suit. And by the time I found my way back to my cargo, I was far enough away to despawn the catcher, meaning I had to do this shit all over again. Second time's a charm though, and I'm eventually able to bomb the hell out of the catcher and shove a grenade right down its throat until it explodes into the white crystals I so desperately need. And now that I have them, I can finally head out to the Tar Lake to kill their BT god. It's a long and painfully slow walk into the lake until I can get to the point where I can use my captured BT as bait, and the Lord turns out to be a BT whale just like the one in the first game, which is a little disappointing since it's the same exact boss fight from the first game, except that one was mandatory and didn't require me to jump through any extra hoops to unlock it, and this feels like a huge missed opportunity to have something new here, like, I don't know, like a BT hammerhead shark or something. Anyway, this dude has the same attacks as the OG BT whale and spends most of his time just floating around in the sky and occasionally shooting a laser at me, and the most difficult part for me was just trying to keep my sanity intact when I was forced to walk out of the lake at this speed for 3 full minutes. And yes, I timed it because you all seem to delight in my suffering. You are welcome. Killing the Tar Lord also unlocked a 5-star rank for the fisherman, and it's around this time that I see a Facebook post from the adventurer's son. So I head up to his place to find his dad is missing again, and I have to go find him. So I retrieve his useless ass from some cliffs out in the middle of nowhere, zip him up in another body bag, and take him home for the 4th time. And yet still somehow not the last time. Why can't this guy just stay in his goddamn house? With the adventurer safe and sound for the next 10 minutes or so, I get back to my regularly scheduled programming and earn 5 stars at the F7 North Distribution Center, the data scientist, the architect, the mechanic, and the aeronautical engineer, all in just a couple of hours. And I bet you're wondering how I managed to do so much in such a short amount of time, aren't you? Well, I've got a secret project I've been working on without telling you. Here, come with me and let me show you something magical. You see, I got real tired of struggle busing my way up these mountains all the time, and I said to myself, Lively, there's gotta be a better way. And there sure was. Zip lines. I spent hours building over 50 of these things all over the mountains so that I could traverse this area without ever touching the ground. Kind of like a high altitude version of the floor is lava. And with this system in place, I can get basically anywhere I need to go in under a minute. Trucks, tricycles, who needs them? Relics of the past, I say. My zipline expressway is the only thing I need anymore, and it's perfect and beautiful. I even made this one play a really annoying anime rock song just in case case anyone else uses it, so that they too have to get their ears blasted apart by this psycho VTuber music, and I love it. Unbelievably, that damn kid throws up another social media post saying his father is missing again, so I head out for the 5th time to take him back home. And I genuinely can't believe that kid doesn't keep his dad chained to the bed or something by now, because this is getting really out of hand. This time around, the adventurer is unconscious on top of a completely random mountaintop, but there's nothing my zip lines can't handle, and I'm up there in a jiffy to bag him up and wear him like a backpack before zipping my way back down the mountain. And man, these zip lines are the best thing that's ever happened to me in my whole life. And I shit you not 5 minutes after leaving their place, I get called back to rescue him for the 6th time. 6! This is 6 times he's gone missing. 6! Apparently he got captured by a BT or something. I don't know, I wasn't really listening. And I'm tasked with investigating a nearby crowd of jellyfish at the bottom of the hill. So I head down and boy howdy, that's a huge bitch up there, ain't it? The game won't let me shoot it and it's slowly drifting in my direction, so I just figure I'll hang out and see what happens. And the answer is nothing. Nothing at all happens. So I guess I'll just get out and have a look. Oh boy, there we go. Giant jellyfish abducts me like I'm getting beamed up by aliens, and we're teleported to a new area called the BT Nexus. And just like with the Tar Lake thing, I have to go through the tar to reach the center of the lake where I can find the adventurer, unconscious as usual, before being attacked by some huge flying BTs. The place gets flooded with more tar, and for a few minutes I just kind of leave the adventurer on the ground in the hopes that he might drown and I wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. But again, nothing happens because I can't be so lucky. So I pick him up and carry him out of the lake, only to be told I'm supposed to walk to the other side of the lake and get the jellyfish giant to teleport me back out. And I hate this game so much that my entire body is vibrating with rage. After returning dear old dad for the 6th time, I finally unlock the 5th star for the adventure, and thank God I never have to see that jackass ever again. And that's 37 facilities down, 5 to go. Getting close. Unfortunately, my zipline network doesn't quite extend out to the rest of Australia just yet, so I grabbed myself a new tricycle to make some deliveries like a normal person, starting with some of Mr. Impossible stuff since what the hell? What just happened? Why did I explode? Man, fuck this, I'm gonna go build a monorail. There's another achievement for completing a full-service monorail line, and I figure that'll be a nice change of pace. It's not. So I get to work on that next. This one isn't difficult or particularly time-consuming. I really just have to go to each of these little connector things and feed it materials to make it print out the tracks overhead. And after doing this over and over for about 20 minutes, I get awarded the Rail Restorer achievement. There was another easy one to get back on the Magellan, so I head back to the ship and slap on my VR headset and complete a quick virtual reality mission where I just had to walk past some dudes to finish it, and bada bing, bada boom, that's another achievement unlocked. This game is easy. Well, okay, maybe not that easy. There was another achievement for inspecting the night sky, and I had no earthly idea how to unlock it. So I ended up Googling it, and it turns out you have to go sit in one of the hot springs at night and look at the constellations in the sky, so that was another quick and easy one down. The ghost hunter sent me on a quest to uncover the truth behind a moving ghost house, but it turned out to just be one of those big hand BTs cosplaying as a hermit crab, so I exterminated that vermin real quick and then turned in the mission. Sadly, it wasn't quite enough to get me up to 5 stars, which I'd really like to do so I can turn that drawbridge function back on and avoid dealing with respawning BTs and ghost mechs, but it is what it is. While I'm here though, I figure now's as good a time as any to finish up the Master Builder achievement, so I start building all the tools and structures I can before it finally pops up on screen, and then I can dismantle all the junk I just threw all over the place because littering is a crime, and I still feel kinda bad that I forgot to do it in Mexico. The ghost hunter sends me on another quest to protect the F8 facility from a potential void out, so I make my way down south and drive out to the middle of the ocean where one of those giant humanoid BTs pops up for a surprise attack, and I'm so very thankful I had the foresight to pack a dozen rocket launchers before coming out here. But just like the Lord of Tar Lake's whale boss, this fight is also lifted directly from the first game, from when you fought Higgs and Amelie in the streets, so I already know how to beat this guy. Rockets to the face and bullets to the birth canal. Rinse and repeat until dead. Pick up the crystals and head back to land. And as a bonus, this also unlocked the Savior of Terminal Fort Knot achievement, so that's nice. And as a second bonus, turning the quest into the Ghost Hunter bumped him up to 5 stars too, so that's 38 facilities down, and I can now permanently leave drawbridge turned on because I don't feel like fighting random shit everywhere I go. I just want this to be over and done with already. At one point, while I was exhausting Dollman's dialogue, he randomly decided to fill me in on his backstory, which seems like something that should have come up like 70 hours ago, but whatever. He says his wife was killed in a tar tsunami a while back, and their daughter never really learned to accept the meaning of death, insisting on visiting mom's BT in the hospital where she died. And despite being a spirit medium and, you know, a responsible father and all, he opted instead to do the decidedly completely irresponsible thing by agreeing with the kid and taking her to see her mom. But go figure, Mama BT ain't Mama anymore, just BT, and they both die in the hospital because they're stupid and you should never listen to children. Fragile eventually finds their bodies, though it remains completely unexplained how she found them, and Dollman is already trapped in the doll by now, explaining that it was originally his daughter's soul in there, but he pushed her out and inserted himself in the doll instead so that her soul could move on to the afterlife. And yet, none of that is what bothers me most here. The worst part is when Fragile asks for his name, and instead of just telling her his actual name, she arbitrarily decides to just call him Dollman, reducing him to nothing more than a talking toy and erasing his actual identity forever. He then asked me to put on his favorite song so that he can have a moment of levity, and I figure that's fine since I haven't used my music player in this game at all yet. But what I most certainly did not expect was a 5-minute long song and dance number with a bunch of Dollman clones and whoever is singing this song. And I can't believe there's a team of people out there somewhere that got paid to animate all this. Not only that, but if you watch it for long enough, trust me, you'll also notice that the 4 Dollmans aren't all performing the same moves, meaning they were each individually captured and rendered instead of just copying one performance across the board. Why are you doing this to me, Death Stranding? What have I become? Anyway, I got the private show achievement for watching that, so it was necessary. A necessary evil. After shaking off that nightmare, Tomorrow pulls me into her private quarters and asks me to choose between Rainey, Fragile, Higgs, and herself, and I figured I should probably choose my own long-lost daughter, but then nothing happens and I just wake up again. And to this day, I have no idea if anything would have changed if I'd gotten that question earlier in the game, or if it unlocks another scene later or something, but there's not a snowball's chance in hell that I'll be booting the game back up to try and find anything out, so feel free to tell me in the comments if I missed something there. I spent an absurd amount of time finishing up the last few preppers, ultimately getting 5 stars for East Fort Knott and the Eastern Environmental Observatory. I ran into some porters and gave them some random junk for another achievement called Porters Make the World Go Round, and I didn't even know this was a thing you could do before reading it in the achievements list. At some point I snagged the Seasoned Porter achievement for completing 10 of each mission type, after which I had to spend another hour doing just this one mission for the Mr. Impossible twins, locking them into 5 stars upon delivery, and then, at long last, after getting the last 5 stars I needed at Terminal Fort Knott, it finally happened. And if you're wondering just how much my stats changed since the last time we checked, I'll put them side by side here for you. I finished this 100% run with just shy of 102 hours of playtime, almost 1,400 kilometers traveled, 2,184 packages delivered totaling over 33 tons, and a grand total of 407,848 Facebook likes. And that's it. That's the end. I'm done. I'm finished. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It took me over 100 hours to play this and another 60 or so to write, edit, and create this video. If you have any ideas for other games I should cover in this style, feel free to leave a comment below. And of course, thank you to all of my patrons for your ongoing support. I am eternally grateful for it. You all have a good day. I'm gonna go uninstall this game now.